we've been talking about purchasing vehicles, and we've talked specifically about new vehicles, that there's two ways you can purchase. You can either purchase it outright using cash or taking a loan, or you can rent the vehicle for a couple of years and pay a monthly or bi-weekly rental fee called a lease. So what I want to talk about now is purchasing a used vehicle, because as I said before, you can't lease a used vehicle. You can only purchase it. So it's certainly a very good option, especially if you can't quite afford the cost of a new vehicle, or even the cost of leasing a new vehicle, or you just don't want to lease, you want to actually own your own vehicle. Because as it says here, a new vehicle loses about 30% of its value after the first year that it's driven, or the first year of ownership. So, I mean, you could conceivably be paying 70% of the full price for a vehicle that's only a year old, which is still a pretty good deal. Okay. Some costs with purchasing a used vehicle. These are things you got to be careful with. You can purchase a used vehicle from a dealership, which is, I mean, dealerships are pretty upfront and honest, and you know all the costs that you're going to have to pay for. But a lot of times, people purchase used vehicles privately, and that can get a little dicey. Because you want to make sure that you're getting a vehicle that works, and there aren't going to be any kind of future problems that are going to creep up after you purchase this used vehicle, whether that be repairs that the vehicle needs, or other things such as, and this is one of the things you should consider, is something called a lien search on a used vehicle. What that means is it doesn't cost much, but all it does is it just checks to see if any kind of financial institution has a hold on that vehicle. Because sometimes when you take a loan, you may have to put up things that you own as what we call collateral, just to sort of ensure to the financial institution that if you default on your loan, they may take some of the possessions that you have. And one could be a vehicle. So a lien search just makes sure that somebody isn't going to come along and seize the vehicle because there was a lien on it, or there was a claim on it by a financial institution. Another thing you absolutely need to get, right, you have to get, is a certificate of inspection, or a safety, what's called. Okay? And basically it's just saying that the vehicle, it's a series of inspections that makes the conclusion that, okay, the vehicle is roadworthy. You can drive it, and it should be good. Okay, so you can see here what an inspection covers: things like brakes, suspension, tires, lights, and a bunch of other things. Another thing you may want to do, although it's not mandatory, is something called a diagnostic test, where it's the computer systems on the vehicle, because most vehicles now, unless you're buying like classic cars or something like that, have computer systems. So a diagnostic test just makes sure that the computer systems are working. Again, there's a cost with that, not a huge cost, okay? But these are things that you should consider. Okay, so like I said, oh, sorry, one thing I forgot to add. Something that you should be aware of when you purchase a used vehicle, whether it's through a dealership or privately, is what's called its book value. There are companies out there that publish books where it will basically tell you the price of, like if you're looking for a 2017 Ford Fiesta or something like that, you can look in these books. These books are online, and you can see what the value would be. Okay, one of the most common one is called Kelly's Blue Book. So always good to see what the book value is, to see is the dealership or this person asking too much, or are they asking too little, and maybe why are they asking too little, or maybe you get a good deal. Okay, so like I said, you can buy dealership through a dealership or privately. Okay, so if you go through a dealership, there's not going to be any costs involved because the dealer has already safetied the vehicle. You don't have to safety it, or the owner doesn't have to safety it. That's done for you. That's an extra cost you can avoid. Also, a lien search has been done to make sure there's no claims on the vehicle. They don't have to do a diagnostic test, but like I said, a diagnostic test is not mandatory to purchase a used vehicle. Okay? So you may want to get one done, you may not want to get one done. So basically, when you buy through a dealership, it's going to be the cost of the used vehicle plus PST and GST. So plus 12%. So for example, Jade wants to buy a used vehicle at a dealership, finds two used vehicles she likes. First vehicle is a $4,500 sedan. Sedan is just a four-door vehicle. That's what sedan means. And the second vehicle is a $5,000 SUV plus taxes. So so basically, to calculate the total purchase price of each, we take the cost of them and we have to add on the 12% tax. So remember how we add tax on to get the new amount. We take the original cost, of $4,500, and we times by 1.12. That gives us the taxes. And if you do that, you're going to get $5,040. Similarly for the SUV, this time it's 5,000 times 1.12 to find the total cost, including 12% taxes, GST and PST, and you get 5,600. She decides she's going to get a diagnostic test done on both vehicles to see which one she would purchase. They're $50 each. Calculate how much she would spend on the diagnostic tests. Well, the diagnostic tests, and we'll talk about this here below, are subject to GST and PST. So $50 for each times 2, because she's getting 2 done, times 1.12 to get the cost including taxes. And that'll give you 112 bucks. Okay. Purchasing a used vehicle privately. There's a little bit of a difference in terms of taxes, and you can see this table here. This is what you get taxed on. So if you buy a used vehicle through a dealership, you have to pay PST and GST. But if you buy a used vehicle privately, you only have to pay the PST. You only have to pay the 7%, which is currently the PST in Manitoba. Okay? And what you have to pay the PST on, and this is something you got to be careful of, it's either the selling price of the vehicle or the book value of the vehicle, whatever is greater. The reason that they do that, okay, is let's say you're going to buy a vehicle from a family member, and basically they're going to give you the vehicle. So what you would say is, I'm going to buy the vehicle from my brother for $1. And you would think, oh, I'm only going to get taxed on the $1. That's not how the government works. Okay? They're going to say, no, 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 you can't do that. You can buy it for $1, but we're going to charge you PST on the book value of the vehicle, which could be $20,000. So you have to pay 7% on that. Okay? So that was something that I sort of ran into. I basically inherited a truck from my brother, and his heirs are my nieces and nephews. And so I didn't pay them for the price of the vehicle. I took it as part of a settlement. But when I went to go insure the vehicle, they said, here's the book value of the vehicle. This is what you have to pay tax on. So I ended up having to pay a couple $1,000s tax, even though technically I didn't pay anything for the vehicle. Okay, so that's sort of how they get around that. A Lien search is very cheap and there's no tax on it. Diagnostic test there is. Safety inspection, be careful with this one. There's no PST, but there is GST. Safety inspections used to run. The government actually mandated, they said that, I believe it was $50. A place couldn't charge you more than $50 for a safety. But then they took that out. So now places can charge you whatever they want for a safety. So now you're paying like between $150 and $200 for a safety, because places can do that now. Whereas before the government said, no, you can't charge more than $50. But you only pay GST on that. And then any repairs, both. So another example where we talk about some of the, when you're purchasing a vehicle privately. Oliver is considered purchasing a used automobile from a private owner. The owner is asking $3,900. The Lien search offer Oliver does on the automobile costs only $4. He has a diagnostic test done and it costs $45. The automotive technician tells him that some transmission work is needed, so those repairs will cost $1,200. And the seller recently obtained a certificate of inspection, so the buyer, Oliver, doesn't have to worry about that. So we need to calculate the total price Oliver will have to pay for this vehicle if the book value is $3,400. Right? So whoever's selling it to Oliver is charging $3,900. The book value is $3,400. Therefore, it's the $3,900 that's taxed. So the asking price is taxed, not the book value, because it's always the higher of the two. And remember, it's PST only. So that means $3,900, and then I want to include 7% GST, so I times by 1 point, and then 7% is a decimal, 07. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, no, I can do that. Yeah. So I get, I think this is right, 4173. Okay. So that's the vehicle itself and PST. Now I have to look at the other stuff, keeping in mind what's taxed and what's not. The Lien search is not taxed, so it's just $4. No tax. The diagnostic test is taxed. Both taxes, so it costs $45 for the diagnostic test To find the price including taxes, I multiply by 1.12 and I get $50.40. So that's the total cost of the diagnostic test. And finally, the repairs that he's going to have to pay. $1,200, and he gets charged GST and PST on it. So the total there is 1,200 times 1.12, which is 1,334. So those are all the different costs. Asking price and PST, the end search, diagnostic tests, and repairs. So to find the total, I just add those four values together. So 41.73 plus $4 plus $50.40 plus $13.44 will give me a total cost to Oliver of $5,571.40. So just to sort of look at the difference between book value and asking price, what happens if the book value of the automobile was $4,200? Well, all that's going to change is this. He's still going to have to pay these three amounts. But because the book value is higher, that's what he gets charged on. So the asking price plus PST is now going to be 4,200 times 1.12, which works out to 4,000. I got that right. $494. Remember, always the higher book value or asking price. And that only applies to private selling or buying and selling privately. So that means that this time the total is going to be $44.94 plus the lien search, no taxes, plus the diagnostic test, including taxes, plus the repairs, including taxes, which was $13.44. Now it's going to be $5,592.40. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward, the calculations here. You just got to be aware of those taxes, when tax applies, when it doesn't. Okay. Let's look at one more example. Just so we're comfortable with this. Rhoda Carr is looking for a vehicle. She's considering two vehicles. One of the vehicles she's considering is a used car from a dealership. The dealership is asking $3,500. The second vehicle she's considering purchasing is a used car from a private owner. Private owner is asking $29.95. So because it's privately, Rhoda did a lien search on it, cost $4. She also had a diagnostic test done that cost $30. The automotive technician tells her that some engine work is required, which is going to cost a total of $875. And she is also responsible for getting a safety done, which costs $40. That's actually a pretty unrealistic amount for a safety. And the book value of the car is $3,500. So purchasing it from the dealership, pretty straightforward. $3,500, and then add GST and PST. And it's going to cost a total of $39.20. Doesn't have to worry about repairs, doesn't have to worry about safety, doesn't have to worry about the end search, decided not to do a diagnostic test, doesn't have to worry about book value versus sale value. Okay, pretty simple. Privately, however, we saw a little bit more involved. So we have to calculate the total price she's going to pay for the car from the private owner. How much is the private owner asking? $29.95. And the book value of the car is $3,500. So what amount is she going to get taxed on? The book value, because it's higher. So let's do, first of all, actually, I won't call it asking price this time. I'll call it book value and GST, because that's what she's going to get charged on. Or sorry, plus PST. And that's going to get me, that's going to be 3,500 times 1.12 gives us 37.45. And actually, I'm just, because I'm a bit of a stickler, if you go back to here. I should have done that in the this example B here. It's not asking price, it's book value in that case, because that was the higher one. I shouldn't have put asking price. Okay. Now we got to do all the other stuff. The Leanne search, $4, no taxes. The diagnostic test, $40, both taxes. Sorry, $30. Safety's $40. $30 times 1.12 gives us 33.60. The repairs, $875. Charge both taxes, so all in including taxes for the repairs, $980. The safety, okay. And remember, the safety is GST only. Would be the cost of the safety $40 times 1.05 gives us $42. So these are all the amounts: $37.45, $4, $33.60, $980, $42. So the total is going to be the book value and PST plus the Leanne search plus the diagnostic, including both taxes, plus the repairs, including both taxes, plus the safety, including only GST. And you get $4,299.60. So interestingly, the dealership, the used car she was looking at the dealership was $3,500. The book value of the vehicle she's looking at privately is $3,500, and yet when you put everything together, she's almost paying $1,000 more because of this extra stuff she had to get. That extra stuff would have been all covered by the if she went through a dealership. Okay, lastly, and this is something really you can just read through, but I'll highlight a couple of points. You don't have to be a vehicle expert, okay? I mean, a lot of people, if they're buying a used vehicle, they'll take it to a guy they know to do an inspection of it. Usually the guy won't charge anything, or the girl. And just to see, is this actually worth buying, okay? But other things that you can do as an individual looking at it is look at things on the exterior, look at things on the interior, okay? So a couple of the big things are paint and rust, okay? Rust, pretty easy to see, okay? Paint, something you should look at. Remember, a vehicle is not just different panels of the vehicle are painted and then it's put together. So sometimes it may have been in an accident, they replace the rear right panel and they don't have the color just quite right. Well, look for that because that tells you that something happened. And if something happened, is that going to cause me problems down the road? Tires, definitely want to look at tires. Look at the treads, the grooves inside the tires. If it's smooth, that means they're bald. That means the tires are old. There should be a groove in there. Okay. And notice here it says less than 2 millimeters. Okay, so if it's less than 2 millimeters, you can pretty much consider it bald. It means the tires are smooth. And then you can see shock absorbers and lights, a couple other things that you want to check. Interior. Okay. Obviously, how the appearance looks to you. Are there scratches? Are there dents or anything inside? Are there, cuts on the seats, things like that? Or is, say, the side rest on the door, is that cracking? Things like that. Some people are fine with that if they pay a lower cost for the vehicle. Other people want it looking better than that. Okay. And instruments, I mean, obviously you want to make sure all the lights are working, so that, like, some of these lights are kind of important, like the check engine light. Okay. It's probably important that that one works. Because if you don't know you need to check the engine and the engine seizes on you, that's really expensive. You're better off just to buy a new car a lot of times or buy another vehicle. Okay. So, and then the engine. So basically look around the vehicle on the ground. If you see any puddles or anything like that, and it's not raining, well, something might be going on. There might be some kind of leak going on there. Okay. Under the hood, a lot of people don't feel comfortable with that. I know I don't. I mean, if somebody asked me to look under the hood and just say, what do you think? I'm like, it looks good. I know where to put the windshield washer fluid. And I know where to check the oil. But all those other things are kind of, strange to me. But obviously, like, it's not going to be perfectly clean. I mean, if it is, that means it's been detailed, which is great. Okay? But there's going to be, I mean, used vehicles are not going to be clean. You have to expect that. And then finally, a road test. You definitely want to take it for a ride, right? And you definitely want to check things like acceleration, check things like the brakes. When you hit the brakes, are you hearing a squeaking? If you're hearing a squeaking, that means that the brakes are wearing out, okay? Things like that. Handling, the pedals and stuff like that, are they sticking? Because you probably don't want an accelerator or a brake pedal to stick, because that could be an accident waiting to happen. Okay? So these are just sort of general things that you could look at. And in the end, once you look at all the costs involved, and once you look at the vehicle itself, and maybe somebody who has knowledge of vehicles has also looked at it for you, then you make the decision whether you want to buy it. Okay? But it's certainly an option to consider because there's a lot of good used vehicles out there. You know, like I said, I mean, a lot of times you can get, I mean, even dealerships, you can go to a dealership and probably sometimes even get a vehicle that has hardly any kilometers on it because they haven't been able to sell it and it's been a year or a year and a half later. Okay. So that is everything involved in buying vehicles or leasing, whether it's new or whether it's used. The last couple of things that we want to talk about in this unit are just the costs associated with operating a vehicle. Okay. Basically, we're going to look at maintenance costs in one lesson, and we're going to look at insuring the vehicle in another lesson. And then that will cover all what we're going to do on vehicle finance.